Hello and welcome. My name is Udita Mishra and I am a biology educator. And in today's session, we are going to learn about the human circulatory system. So, before we can start, let's go into a recap of what we learned in the chapter of life process yet. So, we learned about nutrition and respiration, in which we learned that nutrition is when we acquire the nutrients, okay, the fuel that we require for our body to run. Okay, and in respiration we learned that we can't use that fuel unless until it's broken down or burned. So we learned in respiration that the glucose, the fuel, is broken down into ATP in the process of respiration. Respiration helps us in generating energy in the form of ATP. So now you would be wondering, why do we require the circulatory system? Now here's the answer. We need the circulatory system as it helps us in transporting the nutrients that we acquired and the oxygen that we gained while breathing to each and every cell, so that respiration can take place in each and every cell, so that they can generate energy to carry out their action. Now, as we understand that it helps in the transportation of the nutrients and the oxygen throughout the body, what do we need to understand? That for the transportation we require a few things. The first, we need a medium that can carry the oxygen and the nutrients throughout the body, that being blood. We require a pathway, okay, a pathway through which our medium can flow. So that being the blood vessels. We have the media and the pathway now, but we require a force that can help us to push or to pump the media throughout the body, and that is the heart. Now we are going to go into a little bit more detail about these things that we are going to need in the circulatory system. Blood. Blood is a body fluid, okay, which is comprised of corpus cells and plasma. So what we know about the corpus cells? The corpus cells we are going to learn about are RBC and WBCs. Okay, RBCs are abbreviated as red blood cells and they are also called erythrocytes. Okay, they have the hemoglobin protein that is also giving them the red pigment. A hemoglobin protein carries 4 molecules of oxygen. So basically, red blood cells carry oxygen throughout the whole blood. Okay. Now we have WBCs. These are also known as leukocytes and are abbreviated as white blood cells. Okay. They help in providing us immunity. They help us to fight diseases. Okay, they prevent us from any kind of infection. Okay, now moving on, the third cell is platelets. Platelets are cells that helps us in the clotting of blood. Okay, suppose you got an injury or any scratches where you're bleeding. To stop that bleeding, platelets helps us in clotting the blood so that you don't overbleed or die because of overbleeding. So they are a very important part of your blood. Now coming to the part plasma. Plasma is very important as it's also a body fluid, a part of the blood, and it carries the nutrition, the waste, the carbon dioxide, and a lot of things in fluid form. It is pale in color and is very important to transport the nutrition and to take away the waste, okay, the waste that is going to be generated from the cells or the organs with the blood. Okay, now moving on to our pathway. Now there are two major pathways and 2 to 3 major pathways that we are going to discuss about. The first being arteries, second veins, and the third one capillaries. Arteries are basically the uh, arteries basically carry oxygenated blood except for the pulmonary artery. Okay, they are very thick walled and they have a lot of pressure. Okay, and they are within our skin. Okay, like it is deeply, they are seated deeply inside our skin, so we can't see the arteries on our body. Okay, now for veins, veins are usually carrying deoxygenated blood except for the pulmonary vein, and they have thinner walls compared to arteries as they don't carry a lot of force. They have walls to prevent the backflow of blood. Okay, they are superficial, so you can see your veins through your skin. Okay, now, moving on to capillaries. Capillaries are like tiny branches. They are very thin walled. Okay, they connect the atrioles and venules. Okay, why venules and atrioles are basically when there is a artery going, a small branch-like structure will form. The thicker part of it, which will be called arterioles, and similarly for veins it will be called venules. Okay, now thinner branches coming out of these are going to be called the capillaries. Capillaries are very small. They help us in transporting or in providing, they are like small roots so that every nutrient and oxygen can reach each cell or organ. Okay, first that, and it also helps us in connecting the arteries and veins for the exchange of the oxygenated deoxygenated blood. Okay, I hope that much gives a picture. Moving on to our important part, that's heart. Okay, heart particularly acts as a pump. The main action of heart is to pump blood throughout the body. Now, to understand how the heart functions and how it, what are its functions, how it functions, and why is it important, we are going to discuss more about our pump, that is heart. Okay. So, the human heart. What do we know about the human heart? Hmm? What are its functions? How does the functions, take place, and what does it do? Okay, we are going to discuss these things in the human heart. So, what is the human heart? It is a conical muscular organ. What a heart is? It is a conical muscular organ. It is made up of specialized muscles called the cardiac muscles. Okay? It is as big as your fist. It weighs about 250 grams in females and about 300 grams in males. Okay? It is present in the thoracic cavity. Thoracic cavity, okay, between the lungs, slightly towards the left. So what do we know by now? That it is a conical organ, conical muscular organ. The muscles are cardiac muscles. It is as big as your fist and it weighs about 250 to 300 grams on males and females depending. Okay, now it is present in the thoracic cavity. Okay, slightly towards the left. This is something that we all know, I guess. Okay, now moving forward. It has three layers. Okay, the pericardium, the mesocardium, and the endocardium. Okay, these are the three walls of a heart. The pericardium is a sac-like structure that it's a double sac-like structure that provides safety, and it provides safety from the friction. Okay, it's also like a little fluid cover on the surface of the heart that provides protection from friction, so that your heart does not tire or tear itself because of the friction while pumping. Okay, pericardium. Okay? The mesocardium is as the name suggests, it's the middle part. It's the middle muscular part. It is kind of thick. It is very thick, so that it helps in the contraction. I hope you understand that the mesocardium is the muscular part, the internal muscular part that helps in the contraction. Okay. Muscular middle layer aids in contraction Coming to the endocardium is the smooth internal layer that prevents blood clotting from within inside the heart. Have we understood the three layers of heart? Okay. Moving forward, a human heart is four-chambered. Okay, and it's basically divided into two sides. The left side. Hope you understand the three layers of heart. Now, moving forward, a human heart is four-chambered. Okay, a human has a four-chambered heart, and now we are going to learn more about the chambers of heart. Okay. Okay. Chambers of heart. Okay? So basically, heart is divided into four chambers that has a left side and a right side. Discussing about the left side and the right side. left side is used for the oxygenated blood. Usually carries the oxygenated blood. In the right side has the deoxygenated blood. Now, as for the four chambers, these both have chambers called atrium and ventricles. Okay? So we have a left atrium, a right atrium, a left ventricle and a right ventricle. Atriums are usually the blood collection centers. And ventricles are the zones where the blood is pumped from. Okay, so in the atrium, the oxygenated blood comes to the left atrium through the pulmonary vein from the lungs, and the deoxygenated blood comes to the right atrium from the vena cava. Okay, we are going to discuss more about the blood vessels we have in our heart. Okay, atrium has left and right that both collect the blood coming from the lungs and from the body. Now the ventricles are the pumps. The left ventricle pumps the oxygenated blood through the aorta throughout the body. Okay. Now the right ventricle does the pumping through the pulmonary artery and pushes the deoxygenated blood or pumps the deoxygenated blood back to the lungs so that it can go and get oxygenated. Okay. Now of heart. This I am writing down so that you can remember the terminologies and the parts easily. Okay. So the biggest artery of our body is coming from the heart and the name of it is aorta. Okay. It's an artery. It is going to carry oxygenated blood. Where is the oxygenation center? Where the oxygenated blood lies? Which side? The left ventricle, the left side. So the left ventricle pumps the oxygenated blood to aorta that pushes it throughout the body. Okay. Now we have vena cava. Vena cava. This is a vein. Vena cava is the vein that comes to the heart. Okay. As we learned prior, arteries take the blood away from the heart, and veins get the blood back to the heart. Okay. Now, so with aorta, we have the oxygenated blood as it's an artery from the left ventricle. Now, as vena cava is carrying the deoxygenated blood from the body, the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava brings the deoxygenated blood to the right atrium, the right side. Okay. That is going to carry the deoxygenated blood. Now, as for what is superior and inferior vena cava? Superior vena cava carries the blood from our upper body, and the inferior vena cava is carrying the blood from our lower body. Okay, I hope you got that much. Now, moving on to the next blood vessels. that are the pulmonary blood vessels or the pulmonary artery or pulmonary vein. Okay, we have the pulmonary vessels, pulmonary artery and pulmonary veins. Okay, as we learned, all the arteries carry oxygenated blood except the pulmonary. So it is going to carry deoxygenated blood. Okay, and all the veins carry deoxygenated blood except for the pulmonary veins. It is going to carry oxygenated blood. Now for your health, remember one thing. Whenever there is this term pulmonary, remember it has something to do with the lungs. Okay? It has something to do with the lungs. So now as we know, the pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood pumped by the right ventricle towards the lungs for oxygenation, so that the deoxygenated blood can get oxygenated, whereas the pulmonary veins carry the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. Okay, as we know, the veins carry the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. Okay, as we also know that arteries take blood away from the heart and veins take blood towards the heart. Okay, now so we got an overview and idea about what the structure looks like. It's a conical muscular structure. The muscles are cardiac muscles. It's of 3 layers: the pericardium, the mesocardium and the endocardium, and it has 4 chambers. Okay, basically we understood this much. Now moving forward, we are going to learn about the structure of heart. We understood what the basic things are and how the blood vessels act. Okay, what the blood vessels do and how their action is. Now we are going to learn about the structure in detail. Okay, so let's go with the facts that we have. Heart is a conical muscular organ. It has 3 layers: the pericardium, the mesocardium, that is supposed to be the muscular area, and the endocardium. Okay, now it has 4 chambers. Okay, the right atrium, blood collection; the left atrium, again blood collection; the right ventricle, the blood pump; and the left ventricle, again the blood pump. Okay, now we have these. Okay, the heart is 4 chambered. Why? It is 4 chambered so that the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood do not mix with each other. So for keeping these two separate, there is a thick muscular wall in between, and the name of this wall is septum. Okay, we divided the heart into 2 parts. Now see, so what did we learn? What kind of blood does left side carry? Oxygenated and the right side will carry deoxygenated. Okay, well, now so we need to make sure these 2 chambers are separate as well, right? Okay, so we have something called the atrioventricular walls. What do we have? The atrioventricular walls. Okay, so the left hand side walls are called the mitral walls or the bicuspid walls. Now, the right hand side had something called the tricuspid wall. ठीक है? We understood that we have valves and we know the names of these valves now. Okay. Now let's draw the blood vessels. So vena cava comes into the right atrium, the superior and inferior both. But we're gonna draw these. Okay. The vena cava. Okay. Now what other things are coming inside the right atrium or ventricles? We need to see that we have aorta at the left ventricles. Okay, so it will come something like this, aorta towards the left ventricle and the vena cava entering the right atrium. Now what comes in the left atrium? The pulmonary vein. Okay, what goes out of the right atrium? The pulmonary artery. Okay, I hope you are understanding this, because see, the right atrium is going to push the deoxygenated blood through the pulmonary artery, and the pulmonary vein is carrying the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left atrium, the blood collection center. The oxygenated blood is coming from the pulmonary vein from the lungs to the left atrium. The right ventricle is pumping the deoxygenated blood back to the lungs. Okay, so the pulmonary vein will be drawn from the right ventricle outside, and the pulmonary vein will come to the left atrium. Now the left ventricle has aorta. These are vena cava. Okay, we drew all the blood vessels. Now I hope you are getting to understand what the image looks like. Now we are going to draw the proper image and we are going to understand the circulatory system a little bit better. Okay. Okay. So we learned the structure of the heart. Okay. Okay, we studied the structure. There are a few facts that I would like to mention, that the ventricles have a thicker muscular wall compared to the atrium. Okay, and the left ventricle that has to pump the oxygenated blood to the whole body is having a slightly thicker wall compared to every separate chamber. Okay, now this is a structure of heart. We learned about our blood vessels, the veins, the arteries and the capillaries. Now we are going to learn how the circulation is happening. The structure of heart is here. Now we see how the circulation is happening. So basically we learned two things, that blood is going to the lungs to get oxygenated and coming back to the heart. Deoxygenated blood is going to the lungs and coming back to the heart. One circulation. Then the oxygenated blood is going throughout the body and getting deoxygenated, coming back to the heart. The second round of circulation. So our body follows a double circulatory system. Okay, the one time when the blood flows through the heart and goes to the lungs and comes back oxygenated is called the pulmonary circulation. The other time when the blood oxygenated and moves through the body and gets deoxygenated and comes back to the heart is the systemic circulatory circulation. Okay, simple. We have two names. When blood goes to the lungs, deoxygenated blood goes to the lungs, goes back or gets oxygenated, come back to heart, is pulmonary. When the oxygenated blood goes back to the body, gets deoxygenated, come back to the heart, is systemic. We have the heart, we know which of the blood vessel carries which blood, which ventricle is pumping what blood to which artery, and from there which vein is carrying what type of blood to the heart. Okay, so now let's make it easy for you to understand. Okay, the double circulatory system. Okay, so let's see. We learnt about veins, arteries and capillaries. So here we are going to draw. Okay, these are the branches of arterioles and venules and the capillaries that are going through the lungs. So capillaries of lungs. Okay. Okay, so now we know that the blood is coming oxygenated to the left hand side of heart. This being our heart of 4 chambers, the right atrium, the left atrium, the right ventricle and the left ventricle. So we know the oxygenated blood is coming from the pulmonary vein to the left atrium. Okay, and after the whole process, the deoxygenated blood is going back to the lungs from the pulmonary artery. Okay, we got the first circulation. Now the second one is the circulation that is going through the body. Okay, so we know that the oxygenated blood is pumped by the left ventricle through to the aorta throughout the body, and these are capillaries throughout the body. So we are going to call them capillaries of body. Okay, this. Now the aorta is taking the oxygenated blood pumped by the left ventricle to the body. It is getting deoxygenated and getting exchanged through the capillaries and going into the vena cava vein. Where? The vena cava vein. The vena cava vein is now carrying the deoxygenated blood to the right atrium. Okay, then now the blood will go into the right ventricle, and then the right ventricle will push the deoxygenated blood back to the lungs. So this is the whole double circulatory system. Okay, now you may ask, how is the exchange or how is the blood getting oxygenated or deoxygenated? Basically, as I told, capillaries are thin walled and they have red blood cells. The blood, our main media in it. Okay, the blood carries a protein called hemoglobin. One molecule of hemoglobin is going to bind with 4 molecules of oxygen. We are breathing and doing the exchange of gases. The deoxygenated blood is now in the alveoli. Okay, and now when you are breathing, oxygen is outside and here carbon dioxide is there. Okay, so what will happen? This carbon dioxide will go out and the oxygen molecules will go bind with the hemoglobin protein, and that is how our blood is getting oxygenated. The deoxygenated blood is getting oxygenated and the circulation and the process is taking place. So I hope you understand the chapter. If you have any doubt, please ask in the comments and I'll try my best to answer all of those. Thank you. Have a nice day. You're welcome.